Good evening. It is SEC After Dark. Corey Burton, Steve Willis, and Jeff Beecham joining you. What is up, guys? How's everything going?
Man, I'm having a good time. I'm just down here drinking some Landshark beer. As you know, the Landsharks have been feeding on the gridiron the past 3 weekends, and they got Bama coming up, so I'm pretty excited about that. But overall, man, I'm just excited about what's going on. I'm a little bit bummed that I have a bye week this week, but I'm looking forward, especially to once we get to it, that Arkansas Texas A&M game, because that has a chance to be pretty special.
Yeah, no doubt. What's up, Jeff?
I had a fun week too, but not so fun this week. I've been a little under the weather, so unfortunately this week I'm taking Mama's advice and drinking some high-quality H2O.
There you go, man. I got a little cocktail myself, little bourbon and ginger, a little bit. Going the hard stuff this week. So that's great, man. The chat is up and running. SEC After Dark, Windows 95 Core. I guess that's my nickname nowadays. I don't know if I can upgrade now. I don't know if I can get a good signal because Jake might not know what to do with himself. So, but our chat is live. It's blazing. Our social media information is right down below. You can see our rundown action as he pointed out. We're going to talk a little Arkansas, Texas A&M. We're going to preview that a little bit. We might review a little bit and tell you what happened last week and give our thoughts on that. We'll go game by game. We'll look at some of these previews, things like that, and of course, as always, we will round the evening off with our picks. So let's get into it. Let's do a little review before we jump forward. One of the two of the games of the week this week, one that Jake was very familiar with, and the other a lot of fun to watch as well. And that is Penn State, Auburn, and Alabama, Florida, the two likely most entertaining games of the weekend, last weekend. I know we're a little far away from Saturday at this point, but still, how's it feel to know that Alabama does actually they have humans that play for them?
Yeah, I'm actually wondering is Alabama that bad at stopping the run, or is Florida just that good at running the ball? And this is something I need to know for next week because Tennessee has had a great run defense up to this point, but I'm sure that will all go out the window this week with Florida. But Florida looked great running the ball, really just crammed it right down Alabama's throat. And Alabama had a lot of trouble running the ball on Florida, which I was surprised by. Now, Alabama had the better passing game and overall still very good defense, but I was surprised how good Florida looked on the ground.
Yeah, I think Alabama is a little bit of a victim of how good they've been the last 5 years, and I think people have looked at that and they've set a standard. They put the bar at a certain level. Now they still have 4 and 5 stars everywhere. They have probably the best team in college football, but because Florida had a chance, just because Florida had a chance without elite quarterback play, Alabama's they're in decline. Everything's going down. And Alabama's going to be fine. I do think this offense, and this was my concern coming into this season, it looks more like Jim McElwain running the offense than it did under Sark or Lane Kiffin or even Mike Locksley. And, they're averaging about 400 yards a game. I'll go ahead and pick it right now. That line against Southern Miss is too big because I don't think this offense is going to score that many points just because they haven't.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you right there. I mean, Bryce Young is just, obviously with the inexperience, you're going to get that a little bit where, there's some throws that Tua and Jalen and Mac Jones get hit, like that one RPO slant that all three of those aforementioned guys would hit and sent John Mechie to the house. They weren't able to connect on some of those things. They went stale in larger stretches than they usually do, which is uncommon. And for reasons, and the reasons vary. Like, the offensive line just has a bad series one series, and then we go up, and then the quarterback is a little bit off, or we just, they just can't quite get something going on a part of their offense, and that, that's something that Bama hasn't experienced in quite some time.
Yeah, the 3 back-to-back 3-and-outs, it was almost like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone. Like I said, Alabama's completely a victim of their own success here. But when you see three back-to-back 3-and-outs against Florida that allowed Florida to get back in the game, and just like, what is wrong with Alabama? Well, you have a freshman quarterback. You have a system that's a little bit more pro-style and old-style spread. And the other systems that we're used to seeing are very explosive. They're designed to hit the explosive plays. And defensively, offenses can beat Alabama's defense now. Running the ball and passing the ball and the advent of RPOs, it's not some mystical thing like 2010. So you're going to have to score a little bit to do it. They can't score as much. That's one of the reasons the jumping ahead a couple weeks, the Ole Miss-Alabama game is so intriguing, because Alabama's offense has to show up in that game because Ole Miss is going to score.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the most disappointing things as we jump over to the defensive side of the ball for Bama was that these linebackers and run support just weren't as good as I thought they were going to be. And they didn't play as well as I thought they were going to be. I thought they got pushed around more than I've ever seen Bama get pushed around under Nick Saban. And it's just, I don't know, like there's some concerning levels of that going on. But then again, of course, Florida also played really well. And I do want to give credit to Florida, because even though I'm a Georgia fan and, Florida's at the top of my list of schools that I enjoy rooting against, I do have to give them credit because they had a great game plan running the ball. Obviously they're limited throwing with Emory Jones's lack of accuracy, but I thought they did a good job of getting Malik Davis involved, Pierce involved, all those. The couple of running backs that they do have, I thought they did a good job of getting them intertwined and integrated into the game plan with Emory Jones. So hats off to Florida. They surely improved. Their team really takes over with momentum, especially at home. So hats off to Florida.
Yeah, Dan Mullen
victory.
Yeah, Dan Mullen did a wonderful job with counting numbers, either inside the box or outside the box. There were several pass plays that he schemed it up to where there were 3 Florida receivers and 2 Alabama defenders. Whenever the running game, he used the option pitch to add to basically make Alabama's box count a little bit less less effective, and pitching off the unseen or the unmarked guy down the line opened up another explosive play for that running game. And it helps that Emory Jones is a mobile quarterback. It genuinely does, because he did not throw the ball particularly well, but he did do enough in the passing game to keep Bama honest and kind of expose some things with that defense. Southern Miss is not going to be able to expose that, but it will be interesting to see down the line. If they face Georgia, a defense that can shut that offense down a little bit to where Alabama's all of a sudden in the low 20s, is that defense good enough to keep Georgia in the low 20s or even below that? And I don't think that defensive unit is there anymore.
No, I don't. And Jake, I certainly agree with that. I will take that W, but when you're Alabama, again, the expectations are like way the hell up here. Most teams in America, every other team in America would probably take that L. And we're talking about, hey man, we got into a hostile environment, got into a tough one against a home. When you're Alabama, obviously you're supposed to put away a team like that, especially when you jump 21-3. Expectations are a little bit different, especially into the game when it jumps to 21-3. You're expecting to finish these guys, and last year's game would have been, it would have probably been 48-3 at some point. And no, this guy's not falling, right? But there are some things that make Alabama a little bit more human than in years past.
Yeah, and also remember, against Mercer and against Florida are 2 less than A games, and we're not used to seeing that from Saban. Let's say they beat Southern Miss 38-10, and all of a sudden that game doesn't necessarily do. That's 3 straight games, and that's very unlike a Nick Saban team. Basically, Alabama's got 5 stars everywhere. We get that. They're the best team probably in the country. But you guys are a victim of your own success. You set the bar so high, you have to hit it. And I don't know if this group of players is able to hit that bar that Mac Jones hit last year and Tua even the year before that.
And Jeb, that can really, really, really destroy your confidence too when you set those expectations and you can't quite get to them week in and week out.
Yeah, that's true, and it's a nice problem to have, honestly, that you're been such just a dominant team for so long that now that you're not absolutely dominating teams, it looks bad. But it's a problem actually that we've seen a little more this season from other teams too. Oklahoma hasn't put up nearly the performances I think that I thought they were going to this season. Clemson, much worse. I think they're still winning, but except for the Georgia game, but they just haven't looked nearly as good as I think everybody thought they would. Alabama is
horrendous.
Yeah, oh, it's true. Alabama is above that. They still are a good team. They look good, just not, I think, the level that we expected. And that's the only thing that I saw there. But, I mean, Jake's right. They still won. They went into the swamp, beat Florida. You're not going to complain about that. But sometimes you're just a victim of your own success when it comes to the criticism.
You know what? What they remind me of, this Alabama team, it reminds me of Tennessee like in 2002.
Yeah.
They're just a couple years off the national championship. They're not quite to that level. You can see the talent decline a little bit, and might not be talent. It could be the scheme or whatever they're doing, but it kind of looks like that. Now, there's several more years. I think Phil Fulmer should have gotten past what was it, 2007.
Yep.
I think he should have gotten past that, but that's kind of what it reminds me of to this point. Now, could they correct it? Yes. Could they be the best team in the country over the last 10 years by the end of the year? Absolutely. But as of through a quarter of the season, it's just not kind of there yet.
Yeah, absolutely, and they should be at a level, and you can't lose as much as they lost, but expect to really just jump right into it into the next year. You know, it was always going to take a few games to even really get an idea of if this team is worthy or not. So we'll see. I think October 2nd. I think that's the biggest judgment date, or that's the next judgment date for Alabama. We'll know after that. After the Ole Miss game, they will have gone through A&M and Ole Miss down that stretch, which A&M is actually not proven they're not really anything right now. But we shall see. We shall see. Keyword is yet. But the other exciting game, Jake, you're not going to want to hear this. Go ahead, Steve.
After 3 weeks, after three more weeks, we will have an idea about Texas A&M, about Alabama, and about Ole Miss, and about Arkansas, especially.
Arkansas.
Yeah. So all the questions in the West should be good and set up by the end of like October 9th, after October 9th.
Yeah, and we'll get more into Arkansas as we preview their game of the week here. Surprising, it's not Georgia Vanderbilt. That's not game of the week this week. No, the other exciting game was a Big Ten SEC rivalry. Jake, close your ears. You're probably not going to want to hear this one, but. You know, Auburn, we talked about it a little bit on Beast of the East with Craig and I, but when you looked at this game, it was everything I thought it was going to be. You know, Tank Bigby had a really nice game. Noah Gain had a really nice game for Penn State. You know, there was a lot of back and forth. Defenses played great. The atmosphere was about as electric as you get with the whiteout, especially following the pandemic, the first really big 100,000 per crowd. Since the pandemic, and it just was an incredible atmosphere. It came down to Bo Nix, like we thought it would, and his inconsistencies, especially on the road, they proved to be troublesome for Auburn in the end. And they had that failed trick play that led to a huge momentum swinger there in the favor of the Lions. And you know, the score is 28-20, but you know, I thought Auburn showed me a lot even in a loss. I think they're going to be pretty tough. They're just not together yet. They're not consistent, and honestly, a lot of it is quarterback.
Yeah, I agree, and we've seen that from Auburn in the past, where they tend to start a little slower in seasons. Their defense didn't look bad, especially the run defense. They did a great job. They're the kind of opposite of the last game with Alabama giving up all those yards. Auburn shut the run down pretty well, I thought, for most of the game. There were a couple of big runs, but for the most part, that wasn't bad. It's just they couldn't seem to stop the pass at all. And that's not going to bode well for them in a conference where they're going to have to face both Alabama and Ole Miss. And even Arkansas could be a very interesting game, too. I'm looking forward to that with Auburn. But It wasn't bad, but I think you're right. I think the problem really is just that Bo Nix he's one of those quarterbacks that will give you occasional good games, but for the most part, he's very inconsistent, and you just never know what you're going to get out of him. And it's really hard to win as a team when you don't know what's going to happen at quarterback from week to week.
Yes. Also, real quick, we'll go over to the chat. Dark Sage 9117 asks, he says, I am an Army fan due to my family's service in the armed forces, and we have done well so far this season. And I just lost that chat because another chat came up. I'll read that out in just a second. Let me bring that
He
up.
was basically, Steve, he was basically asking if Army plays well, they're off to a 3-0 start under Jeff Monk. And he was asking about service academies being ranked and top 3 bowls and things like that. And I'll jump on that while you kind of pull and get your thoughts together. I mean, like any other school, like any other G5 school, I think if you play well and you're undefeated, you're going to be ranked. You're going to be ranked pretty well and pretty fairly because they're kind of they're the new service academy. Navy run now. I think right now Army's on their run with Jeff Mom.
Corey, Windows 95 is taking over real quick there. So I will actually,
yes.
yeah, I will jump on this. If Army is good as Navy has been good in the past, I'm a former veteran of the Navy, made it up to E5 and did all that. They should absolutely be ranked. I do think there is a ceiling to where they can be. I don't think they would be the top team in G5, and therefore they would not hit an access bowl like the Peach Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl. One of the non-playoff bowls that can have the playoff. I don't think they will hit that, but I do think they should be rewarded for bowls. I think this is the reason that they accept bowls before the season starts. A lot of people don't know that. The bowl that's in Annapolis is basically ready-made for Navy. There's a bowl in Fort Worth that's set up for the Army, and everything is based off of their success. I know Ole Miss has played Air Force 2 times in bowl games, or 3 times in bowl games, believe it or not. And each and every time it has been fantastic. I do like the service academies. I love it when they do well. I'm glad that Army is up to snuff, and I am very, very disappointed that Navy doesn't look very good this year.
Yeah, they've had some turmoil there on their coaching staff. They've had to fire their offensive coordinator. But yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Steve. It makes that Army-Navy game really good, and the Commander 2 trophy really a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing up in Philadelphia or wherever that game is played, the Army-Navy game, and that's one of the reasons they play it the week after the championship games and they space it out is because they know they're not going to the Sugar Bowl. They know they're not going to the Rose Bowl. So that is kind of the de facto Service Academy bowl game, even if Air Force is not included, because that Army-Navy game is such pageantry. It's always on CBS. It's theirs all by themselves, and it's turned into the kickoff of bowl season.
You think the Space Force Academy will get their own team?
The Coast Guard Academy's in D3.
That's right.
Really?
They're the what are they? The Merchant Marines or whatever?
Well, the Marines are the Navy.
No, there's I don't know. There's a D3 school that tried to recruit some of our kids at Hillwood a few years ago. That was D3, and there was some sort of like Coast Guard, something like that.
Merchant Marines. Merchant Marines.
That's what I said. Yeah, Merchant Marines. That's pretty good. I think the Marine Corps should break off and get their own division there and have a 14 playoff between the service academies. I think.
Speaking of which, did you see the Navy Air Force game? The uniforms that Navy wore. It was basically a football version of the Marine dress blues. Man, it looked good.
Really?
Yeah, it looked good.
The hand painted helmets, I think, were my favorite Navy uniforms, and then of course the Stormtrooper all white for that Army wears. They're so clean. I love it.
Yeah, I like their grays as well.
Yeah, the grays are nice. The grays are nice. But Was there any other game in week 3 that jumped out at you guys, even outside of the conference?
Yeah, Oklahoma's not very good.
No, they're not. Speaking of conference games, yeah, they're not very good.
Yeah.
Clemson wasn't very good either. So
Yeah.
Yeah, 14-8 over Georgia Tech. It was a weird game though.
Ohio State needed another fourth quarter rally, and they were playing Tulsa. They're not playoff good either.
No, CJ Stroud he's Jekyll and Hyde, man. It's weird.
He reminds me of the guy that you guys at Georgia started last year. Maybe a little bit better than him, but
Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, that's a hot take, Jake.
That take is after the giant egg NC State laid a couple of weeks ago in Starkville. That is a piping hot take. I will say I don't think there's a whole lot of teams in this country that want a piece of BYU right now.
No, they could win the Pac-12 this year.
They really could, or the Big 12. They're a Big 12 member.
Well, they play 5 Pac-12 teams, and they're 3-0 right now. And they have 2 more.
They forced him to transfer.
Yeah, Pac-12 they have some problems too. I know LSU was hoping that UCLA game was just losing to a great team. It's having a good year, but UCLA didn't look as good this weekend. Now they were playing a good team. Fresno State is actually a lot better than I thought they were.
Not much difference, man. You don't want to mess with them right now. Yeah. They're on a roll. San Diego State, Fresno State, and BYU, three really strong teams that probably could compete in the Pac-12 this year. So, again, to impress me, Minnesota on the road, Colorado just destroyed them, just got all over them, even without a running back. I thought that was good. I thought looking at Georgia and the lead they jumped out to JK, like it is South Carolina. But
hey, Corey, disconnect and reconnect to this. See if that cleans it up a little bit.
I will.
Yeah, do that. And we'll talk about it. If you have any questions in the chat, bring them up. We'll answer them right now. We're trying to get Corey, who is blue. Corey blew himself. There he is.
I did. I'm part of the blue man. I just came back. I gotta get my blue makeup off.
Yeah.
Let's see if that does anything. Yeah. My computer just doesn't like to cooperate. My computer's probably just as exhausted as I am. It'll go to the very first Apple IIe or whatever. I'm playing Oregon Trail.
Corey's on Commodore 64 over there.
Yeah, my Atari.
Mm.
Yeah. Why does my computer suck tonight? Why does it suck? Why does it suck lately? Anyway, you guys want to jump into next week?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it, man. Well, game of the week is going to be. I don't know. You may have heard of these two teams, but Arkansas and Texas A&M. Arkansas is the surprise team of the conference, and when I say surprise, they didn't really have a ton of expectations, but when you look at how they're playing, it is outstanding. They're a team that's so much fun to watch. They're physical. They play that Kendall Brown system. KJ Jefferson just keeps improving. A week ago, they played Georgia Southern in a game that probably in most years would have been really tight for Arkansas, especially coming after the win they're coming off of. But they suffered no hangover. They got off to an early lead, thrashed Georgia Southern 45-10 last week. They come into this week played against a very disappointing Texas A&M team, and I get that they're on their second string quarterback without Calzada, but he was expected to. A lot of people thought maybe he was going to win the starting job at quarterback. So it's not like you're taking this huge drop off from number 1 to number 2. So it is concerning right now that we're at this point with Texas A&M and they're just not clicking yet. So this is not a good matchup for A&M right now. This is they're not at an all-time high on confidence levels. Arkansas is. This is a game that Arkansas is going to get back. Last year, they played a back and forth game for a little bit, then Kellen Mond and company just pulled away from them. So, I'm excited to see if Arkansas can get a little revenge. KJ Jefferson is going to have a big game. Fortunately for Arkansas, I don't know how A&M continues to do this, but they are playing in Jerry's world. So, how do you guys see this game shaking out?
Go ahead, Joe.
I don't know. For A&M, I think that felt a little better just because it's the last game. Calzada was able to come in, kind of settle down, play well. So at least you've got a little bit of momentum with him and a little bit of work with him in the offense coming in. Their defense is still really good. Really good. So, honestly, A&M, I think, is still a good team. It's just Arkansas has been surprisingly great this season. It's just something I can't believe has been happening, and I'm not sure what to attribute it to. You know, as a fan and not knowing that much about the ins and outs of the sport, I don't know what exactly they're doing right there, but they're doing something right. And as an A&M, if you're A&M, I think you have to be pretty worried about this game. A game that I think before the season you would have penciled in as pretty much a definite win, and now you're the underdog. It's just it's crazy. And I think Jake is right. I think Arkansas right now is the third best team in the SEC West, which is very surprising.
Yeah, it's very weird. And a couple of things you need to remember when watching this game. Haynes King not being in this game hurts them against this defense. A running quarterback would have provided an element of surprise that would have been used in this game. This would have been a game that you could have seen Haynes King run for 80, 90 yards and a couple of touchdowns. As it sits now, running straight pro-style Alabama 2010 offense, because that's what Jimbo's going to have to run, because that's the type of quarterback Calzada is, that kind of plays into their hands in the same way that they handled Texas earlier on this year. Now, the flip side of that is Texas A&M's D-line, they probably have the advantage against the Arkansas O-line, which means they're going to struggle to run the football. This is going to be a game that could be 13-10. It could be 17-14. But it could be very interesting. I think Arkansas will play emotion, and they will get that Southwest Conference title this year and go 3-0. And, I mean, I don't think they're going to be stopped this time.
No, I think Lou Holtz is going to lead them to victory. Then he's going to slobber all over the camera when he talks in the post-game press conference. But no, in all seriousness, I think it's going to be, this is one of those games where you're not exactly sure how Arkansas is going to win. You're not exactly sure how KJ Jefferson is going to beat them, because there's going to be some adjustments that they're going to have to make throughout the course of the game, because you're going up against such a good defensive front with A&M, especially the defensive line, more specifically. So this could be a perimeter ball game between both teams, and whoever has the better perimeter play, I think is going to have the edge in this, because I think both lines of scrimmage are going to be ultimately shut down in the run game. So you're going to have to get a little creative in how you score points. So it's either going to be 10-7, 13-10 range, or you're going to see it go the other way, and it's like 42-38, where there's a lot of points and there's it's like a 4.5 hour game, because there's like 100 passes between the two of them. And I think it's going to be, either one of those two scenarios. I don't think there's going to be any in between or any middle ground there. I think it's either going to be about as much of a defensive struggle as you can get, or it's going to be a track meet with not that much run game.
Yeah, if it's 42-38, that means both of these teams are playing for third in the West. Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And it's going to come down to how does their secondaries hold up? How does their edge guys hold up in the run game? How's their safeties and corners and some of their bound extra defenders and whatever you want to call them, dogs, stars. A lot of people have different names for them, but that's that extra safety, the nickel safety, nickel corner. How do those guys play? How do those guys fare? And that's what it's going to come down to, I think.
KJ Jefferson running the football, pay attention to that. If that's happening, if that's going well, Arkansas has a big advantage in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. Because Calzada is not that guy. Haynes King would be that guy. And I think, anytime you deal with that, I think you get a little bit of anytime you can make it truly 11 on 11, you get that extra blocker. I think you're in business in the quarterback run game. So
yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting nonetheless. So, but moving on, unless Jeb, you had anything to add?
No, that was great.
All right. Moving on, game of the week. This is the Jake Thomas Best of the West game of the week. Auburn versus Georgia State. No, I'm just kidding. But in all seriousness, Auburn, I think they need to find out how to get some consistency at the quarterback position, how to get some consistency, and how to get a feel of play calling. This will be a good game to kind of figure out where your kinks are and how to fix them.
Yeah, they should throw the ball 45 times this game. You can beat Georgia State with Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter. Those are great backs. But you need to fix the passing game, and the only way you can do that is game reps. So if you're running the ball to beat Georgia State 60-0, that tells us absolutely nothing.
That tells us what we already know. You have a good running game, but you still don't have any answers, because when Arkansas, Ole Miss, Alabama, even LSU come to town, they're going to shut that. Teams are going to shut down your run. Georgia's going to shut down your run. What are you going to do? That's an October game now, Auburn. What are you going to do?
Good grief, that game's scary.
Mm-hmm. The runaway industrial fridge, Jordan Davis is, yikes. So, but yeah, that game should be, hopefully that they do that. We got a ACC SEC matchup. Missouri traveling up to Boston to take on the BC Eagles. That game will be interesting. Missouri is 5-point road favorites on that one. It's almost a pick 'em right there. But when you look at what Missouri's done, it's been weird, because they've been a little bit disappointing, because we thought they'd be a little bit more explosive offensively. They haven't really been, but they're a team that, they're not getting blown out, but they're just not overly impressive either. And BC is really good up front on both sides of the ball. But last time we had one of these types of matchups where we thought the ACC team would come out ahead on up front, it did not happen, and that ACC team got embarrassed. I think there's potential for that. I think Connor Bazelak is really quietly having a really nice season, but I think when you look at the team as a whole, they struggle at times. But they're Drinkwitz, I think, is still doing a good job. They're still very, very scrappy. They still play hard. They're just not clicking yet fully. They're not clicking on all cylinders right now. But I see this, if they play to their capabilities, I think they're gonna run away from BC.
I understand your point and what you're doing, but the next time you'll be here, you'll probably be regurgitating Gordon Wood. No, I'm just kidding. That was at least y'all got that. Yeah.
I got a number. How about them apples?
Little Goodwill Hunting on SEC After Dark right here.
Right.
We're talking
right.
Boston. I expect Missouri to win this game. I think Boston College being undefeated at this point is kind of fool's gold. I think that line is scary because Missouri's been kind of up and down. I really like Connor Bazelak. He reminds me of Matt Corral as a freshman and sophomore, very young Matt Corral. And I think as this season progresses and as he thinks he's going to get better and better and better. And one of the steps is they're probably going to beat Boston College by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, totally. Jeb?
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. I think Connor's actually played pretty well to the season, and you're right. He's kind of like a lighter version of Matt Corral, so maybe just a younger version. But I don't know that much about him to be able to compare him really to other people. But I think he's played well, and I agree that I think Boston College is a decent team, but I think the SEC is it's going to be a different animal for them when they hit this, and Missouri may take a little bit of time to get going, but I think they're going to end up winning this game fairly easily.
Absolutely, man. Well, moving on, Will Hall brings his mustard buzzards, as Steve affectionately calls them. That name will forever. I will never call Southern Miss the Golden Eagles ever again. They're the mustard buzzards. Thank you, Steve. Sorry, Southern Miss fans. It's just funny. But Will Hall brings his team to Tuscaloosa. They're going to take on the Tide. of Alabama. What do we need to see out of Alabama this week to say that they're on the right track?
They need to cover. I mean, 46 points. They need to score 50. It needs to be 50-0, and they need to be ready for the Ole Miss game. They need to be clicking on all cylinders. I don't think they're going to do that just because I'm not sure this offense is at a position to where they can do that. And with Brian Robinson being a little bit banged up going into this game, he's probably going to have his carries limited. That means more Trey Sanders and more McClellan. And, everything could happen. It could be a Wally Pipp type situation with Brian Robinson. But I see this game being somewhere in the neighborhood of 45-10, a comfortable Alabama victory. They found a way to give up 10 points. And, let's move on to next week. And we don't really know what's going on before that game.
No, and I think Bryce Young just needs more game reps in the RPO schemes that they enjoy. I think he needs to figure out how to hit those guys in stride. I think he just needs to find a way to get his rhythm. I know Florida disrupts that a little bit, especially with their linebackers. But Bryce Young just needs to just find his rhythm. I just think he needs to get settled into the offense, and I think he needs to hit a few big plays to be sharp. We were worried about that with JT Daniels at Georgia. He did that against South Carolina, an inferior opponent that we should have beaten. We should have covered that game, to be honest with you, but we didn't. The defense kind of gave up a bomb there in the second half. The third unit gave up a bomb in the second half to blow the cover. But, I think it's, as long as the offense can work on a few things, their running game is just fine. Some of their passing game is just fine. But I think they need to work on some of the little bit more intricate passing routes and especially the RPO section of their playbook. So if they cover and they're sharper on offense, that will let me know that, okay, everything's going in the right direction.
Yeah, one thing to pay attention to is that this offense that Alabama's running this year, Bryce Young looks a lot like Deshaun Watson. He plays the position like Deshaun Watson played the position at Houston. And that is not so much a dual threat offense. I talked on one of my show, Talking Ball with Bill Flowers, talking about what scares him, and that is that Alabama would let Bryce Young start really utilizing his legs because he's an elite runner. He's a little guy, and that's going to raise the risk of injuring him, but it's going to make that offense so much more dangerous. And I don't know if this week they're going to do it, but that might be something you see in the Ole Miss game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the change in coordinator's been really it's been kind of a clunky transition, so to speak. I mean, obviously Miami is proving that they're pretty terrible. So that was more like a G5 opponent there that they blew out. But for Alabama, just find some new dimensions in your offense and just be a little bit more dynamic. I feel like they're still in tier 1 of their offense right now.
Miami ran a quarterback sneak from the shotgun.
That says everything you need to say. So on that point, we're going to transition to our next game. Jake doesn't think I can say anything good about Florida. He may be right. Tennessee comes to town as 20-point underdogs in that game. Tennessee is doing some good things. I think where Tennessee is struggling right now is their depth. They have a really hard time finishing games off. They have a really hard time just in the second halves of games and taking care of the ball. And, they get a little tired and big plays happen and bad things happen. And that's going to come with a team that's been decimated by the transfer portal. Not shocked by any stretch, but I do think Josh Heupel is heading in the right direction there. Florida, okay, here's my challenge. All right, here's my challenge. I'll say something positive about Florida. What can I say positive? They are sponsored by Jordan. No, in all seriousness, I do think Dan Mullen has done a good job with the run game and scheming for that and understanding how limited he is in the passing game and accounting for that. I still think they take silly timeouts. I still think they waste their timeouts and call bad ones in bad spots. And, they don't have them down the stretch when they need them. Defensively, they're a boom or bust defense. It is what it is. They're going to make big plays, but they're going to give up big plays as well. So, you know what you get with Florida. Tennessee will hit a few big plays because that's what Florida does. They give up a few big plays there, and they're going to make a few, and they hope that they make more than they give up. And offensively for Florida, I think against a team like Tennessee, where they're just like a year or two away from really being dangerous, that I think Florida needs to work a little bit on their passing game, and they need to get in tune. I think Emory Jones and KJ Jefferson came into the year on the same plane as far as where they were accuracy-wise and as passers. But I think KJ Jefferson is light years ahead of where Emory Jones is. Emory Jones is at the bottom of the conference in all the passing categories. He got two touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not very accurate with the ball. I think he's in the 50s with as far as completion percentage. But rushing statistics are through the roof for Emory Jones. So he just needs to get better as a passer. They need to get a little bit better passing game. If they want to compete with Georgia, they're going to have to be multidimensional. Gone are the days of 2014 and 2015 when they threw 6 passes and beat Georgia 45-10. Like that's not going to happen now. So they need to get a little bit more multidimensional.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about this game. Remember, one thing people need to remember about Dan Mullen is Nick Fitzgerald. They put up the stat several times because Matt Corral had 3 touchdown passes and 4 TDs rushing.
Facts.
Yeah. Nick Fitzgerald had two separate games of 2 touchdown passes and 4 touchdowns rushing. The only person on that list that popped up, and that really impressed me, is like, okay, Dan Mullen knows how to handle Emory Jones and more specifically Anthony Richardson. I hate to break it to you, Jeb. I think this could be the game that AR-15 really makes an impact. He's wearing Tebow's number, and he has a chance to be quite dangerous at the quarterback position.
You got to do this. I learned how to do this from over 15 in Florida.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't really disagree with anything you said. I know Tennessee's done some good things so far. Like I said, they've been very strong on run defense. Their special teams have been pretty good, but they haven't faced any. Pittsburgh was a good team. The competition has not really been the level of Florida, though. I think Florida probably took a lot of what Alabama was giving them last week with running the ball quite as often as they did. They might not get as much of an opportunity this week, but this is a week to work on the passing game, and it probably will be pretty successful if I have any past history to kind of fall back on there. So, unfortunately, Tennessee is still struggling offensively, just in many facets of the game. Their offensive line was good the first game, but a couple of injuries have occurred, and now the offensive line has been rough ever since then, which has kind of dropped the running game, which was again good the first game, and it's just gone downhill since. But a lot of that's due to injury, which just happens. They haven't been able to find their quarterback. I think, and Coach Heupel is known as a quarterback kind of coach, so I'm just going to have to trust him with what he's doing. If I have to guess, I think that Hooker is better at running the offense right now. He's kind of like a higher floor, lower ceiling guy, and Coach Heupel seems like he wants to really push it with Joe Milton because he thinks that Joe Milton can have that higher ceiling. And give Tennessee better plays in the future. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but it's probably going to result in some rough games to begin with for sure. So
it won't. I don't know what they see in Joe Milton. He's just not. He's proving every time he steps up on the field, he's not a high caliber quarterback. I mean, it is what it is, and it's okay, it's fine. He's got a shot, and he's proven it at 2 different universities, Michigan and now Tennessee. So you can't really say it's Harbaugh now because he's having the same problems as Tennessee. So I just think that he's just not as good. He's not. I don't think he's a great fit in this offense. I said that from the beginning. I was surprised when he was listed as the starter. So I just think that you need to move. Tennessee needs to move on from the Joe Milton experience and let's invest a little bit more into Hooker, or if you really want to see what your quarterbacks have, let's see what Harrison Bailey has. Right?
Yeah.
You might as well at this point.
Yeah. And also, Joe Milton right now is a part of my favorite joke in college football, replacing the one that Dan Mullen ruined, which was the Atlantic will defeat Florida before Kentucky does. And but my favorite joke right now is Joe Milton can throw the ball 40 yards if you ask him to throw it 40 yards. If you need him to throw it 30 yards, he can throw it 40 yards. And it that's kind of just a fun joke at the moment. I think there's no chance for Tennessee to win this game with Joe Milton as quarterback. With Hendon Hooker, at least Tennessee has a chance because he has a better deep ball. And the deep ball against Grantham is the way they go. They have an explosive defense designed to steal possessions. That's what they want to do. They want tackles for loss and they want turnovers. And to do that, they open themselves up for the deep ball. So the way you attack Florida is to throw the ball downfield. And Hendon Hooker is the better quarterback to do that.
And it may give us a good idea of what Coach Apple's thinking right now. If Hooker comes out and plays, then I assume he's trying to win that game. If Milton comes out and plays, I assume he is not as worried about winning now as he is trying to build for the future. I personally would like to go ahead and try and win that game, but
your future is not in Joe Milton. Again, I will trust Heupel on this, but to me, Joe Milton is not your future. If you're hooking your wagon to him, you're going to get into another Garantano situation where you just can't get rid of him at that point. And I don't know. I'm kind of worried about that situation, but for sake of time, let's move ahead. This is truly the game of the week. No, I'm just kidding. But Georgia Vanderbilt. Georgia comes to Nashville. Georgia comes into Vanderbilt. I think what you need to see out of Georgia is just, cover on the road. They're 34.5-point favorites. I think JT needs to come in and be sharp on the road. I think this team just needs to come in and be sharp as a whole because this is, playing Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt is very easy to get lulled to sleep with that atmosphere or lack thereof. And you're playing, it's very easy in that situation to play down to the level that Vanderbilt plays at, and that's kind of how they get you. So I think Georgia needs to come out. They play to a standard. They get things going. They jump out early like they did against South Carolina, and then just cruise and get ready for Arkansas next week.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to Georgia, I don't give up more than 7 points. Your defense is rolling. Don't give up more than
pitch
7
a shutout.
points.
You got pitch a shutout.
Yeah, score 42, get out of Nashville healthy, and get ready for Arkansas because your season's about to really start.
Yeah. And Vanderbilt will have a game or two this season where they just kind of surprise you with how well they play. I don't think it's going to be this week, though. I honestly, and I know, Jake, you're going to hate to hear this, I honestly think Georgia's the best team in the SEC right now. That defense is just going to be way too much.
Yeah, Jake, what do you think about that? That's gonna.
Georgia's the best team in the country right now.
Right now, I think they are. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes as weeks play on. But now,
they're the only team that's acted like it.
I would say that even if that stuff wasn't on the wall behind me. So I think it's they just their defense is. There's very few weaknesses within this defense. I think obviously the deep ball has been proven to be a little bit of a weakness, but those guys come right back at you. They don't bat an eyelash, man. Yeah, eye roll. I knew Jake. Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. We got a little rivalry going here on the chat. What's up, Guy? How's it going, man? Guy joined us on Beast of the East on Monday night, so that was fun to see. I'm glad Guy is becoming a regular member of the chat.
Corey, before we move on, if Georgia plays Alabama in the SEC championship game, I want a Jake Thomas, Corey Burton podcast on this channel.
I'd love to hear that.
Done and done. If Jake will show up, I might upgrade my internet package for that one.
Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
So yeah, that'd be outstanding. So Alabama, don't screw me on this, all right? But yeah, no. So Georgia Vandy, just pitch a shutout, look sharp, put a 50 burger up, and let's move on. We've got Kentucky, South Carolina. Very quickly for Kentucky, man, their turnover margin is awful. They're -6 in the turnover margin. They've really kind of struggled lately. What's going on with Kentucky? I don't know I don't know what to make of them because they got off to a really hot start.
2 words: Kenny Trill. That is what's happened. I am not a Will Levis believer. I'm a believer in this offense a little bit, but their stat lines the last couple of weeks have looked exactly like they did last year when Eddie Gran was calling the plays and they were putting a wide receiver back there at quarterback. So in this system, what they're doing, it's just not there right now, and I think they're reverting back to what's comfortable.
Yeah, exactly, and that's not good news for them because they have a guy that I thought was capable in Will Levis. They have a system that now I'm starting to kind of believe that, at first I was like, okay, well, maybe Liam Cohen is, I think he's pulled out the right pages here to kind of pare it down to a 20-hour rule. But maybe he hasn't.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe he's fallen into the same NFL trap that a lot of these guys fall into. They try to bring too much. And right now, it just seems like he's just swimming in it.
Especially those West Coast guys with their 400-page playbooks.
Exactly. And all these checks and caveats and things like that. And, with a team like Kentucky, when you're transitioning, you can't be overly complicated because, yes, those guys are scholarship players in the SEC. And there are some expectations as far as them being able to pick up this stuff. But you only see them 20 hours a week. They've got classes. They've got other things to do. They're not professionals. You're paying them millions of dollars to learn this stuff, and if they don't learn it, you cut them and move on. These kids are 4-year players for you, and so you've got to A, tailor it to what you got, B, make it digestible, and C, make it executable. So, and I don't think they've checked any of those boxes yet.
No, not even a little bit. But hey, the benefit is the Luke Doty starting era under Shane Beamer is getting ready to start.
It looked pretty good. They were able to connect on some deep balls. Luke Doty looked pretty comfortable, more comfortable than I ever thought he was going to look. And defensively, I thought South Carolina did some good things. Again, they played Georgia, so it's hard to really, it's hard to look at that score and say they did a lot of good things, but it did. They had some good pressures. They had a couple of sacks on JT Daniels, a couple of hurries. I think they forced an interception there. JT Daniels by kind of mixing up their coverages, and they brought a little bit of a late pressure, and JT just threw it up for grabs. And so I think they do some good things, and I do think South Carolina has the capability of frustrating Kentucky. And if this game, it's in Columbia, right? So if they make it close, if it's tight down the stretch, South Carolina could win this game because this environment's going to be frenzied a little bit. They're hungry down there.
And it just depends. If Kentucky plays like they did against Missouri, I think they're going to win pretty easily. But struggling against UT Chattanooga, that's rough. And honestly, their offense got outscored. They won because of a 95-yard interception return for a touchdown, which was impressive. But it's I don't know what it is that causes not to work this week the way it did the week before. And maybe Steve's right. Maybe they're just kind of reverting back to what they feel is familiar because it just wasn't working for them right away. But they're going to have to definitely settle down against South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. I look for South Carolina to muck this game up a little bit. There's players on the defensive side of the ball because Will Muschamp is a good defensive coach. So they need to lean on that. If Luke Doty can just manage the game and the offense can play clean, they have a shot, and they don't need to give up big plays to any of the Kentucky receivers, or don't let Craig Robinson necessarily go. And if he gets going like he did against Missouri for 200 yards, that's going to be a problem. So just hold him around 100, limit his yards per carry, and don't give up the big play, and you have an excellent chance.
Yeah, and Wandale Robinson as well. Don't let him get loose. But, Chris Rodriguez, contain Wandale Robinson, and make the other guys beat you if I'm South Carolina. That's a good game plan. So, last, and Steve, maybe in your mind, certainly least, LSU takes on Mississippi State. This game is essentially a pick 'em minus 2.5. We will officially pick this game in our segment. But this game, there's a lot of stuff off the field that's concerning for LSU. it leads me to believe that I think the LSU is out to get me. That when you look at this matchup, it's just Mississippi again losers big special teams gaff against Memphis a week ago. LSU is just they're just not there yet. And I know he's on his way out. So I think I think Mississippi State has just as good of a chance as they ever have of beating this back, which would be incredible.
Yeah, Corey. Do your thing for your Windows 95. Again, you're starting to get going. But this is the chaos game of the week. This is the game that everybody needs to pay attention to because LSU has problems stopping the shallow cross. UCLA beat them running the shallow cross. Now, this game, Mike Leach is going to run this every play. They're not going to play drop 8. They're probably going to line up and try and play man coverage because they have Eli Ricks and Derek Stingley and all these great players and all these talented guys on the outside. And it's just going to open up this game for Mike Leach to do what Mike Leach does. And if Mike Leach does what he normally does, LSU gets beat. And if LSU gets beat, chaos ensues in Baton Rouge.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. If you had any hope that Coach Orgeron was going to be the long-term answer, it will go out the window with a loss this week. They were on the precipice last week. They showed a decent performance against Central Michigan. Now, what happens? Because they expect to beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State just lost to Memphis. Whether officiating, no matter what happens, if the kid picks up the ball instead of downs it, none of that happens. They talk about all the mistakes all day long. If he just picks up the ball like you're taught in Pop Warner, that play is dead. But he didn't. He hot dog and just touched it down and walked away. And credit to the Memphis guy for having the foresight to pick that up and return it. But I think Mississippi State has a chance through the short passing game to absolutely take apart LSU. Mississippi State's defense is salty, especially against the run. It could be a game where they have 7 yards rushing, LSU, and they throw for 320. But because they only have 7 yards rushing, that 320 also comes with 3 picks. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that they're going to be in the face of Max Johnson all night long. They're going to be disruptive. They're going to stuff the run. I think when you look at the game plan here, it's just being disruptive, holding the ball, things like that. So, and it doesn't help that all of LSU's running backs are taking the wrong classes, so they can't play. So, you got to contend with that a little bit as well. So, I don't know. Like when you look at LSU, they're such a weird team because they're really bad in some cases, and then then they'll pop up just when you least expect it. They'll be really good for a game, and then you're like, okay, yeah, LSU. Okay, maybe I was wrong. Nope, I'm not. Just leave that Kool-Aid on the table for me. I'm not buying into LSU at all under Ed Orgeron right now. I think Mississippi State wins. I think Mike Leach just for this particular defensive scheme. I thought they fired Bo Pelini. Did they not?
The LSU's running the same stuff.
Like what? Like why? I don't like. I find myself when I watch LSU just asking myself why.
Yeah, 4 down, man free. That's their defense.
Why?
You don't even need film study. 4 down, man free.
Mm-hmm. 4 down, man free. Let's go. Like you have 2 of the greatest cornerbacks. Why not mix up coverages? Why not? Why not do some things defensively that's going to maybe confuse people?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Rock one of the quarters back to one of the safety positions and end up with a cover 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
There's so much creativity you have with those. Your front guys are actually pretty good talent wise, but scheme is killing them.
But Anthony is injured and out for the year. Who was leading them in sacks?
Yeah, that hurts. That doesn't help. But I think Will Rogers is another quarterback that you look at him that you look at their win-loss record and you look at, but I think honestly you look at the stat page and he's having a pretty nice season.
Yeah. Oh, if you also If Mississippi State would treat the rest of the game like they treat the game when they're down by 2 scores, they would be fine. Absolutely fine with what they're doing. The sense of urgency they get in the fourth quarter to come back against Louisiana Tech and almost come back against Memphis, it's not there in the first 3 quarters. You hit those slow check downs and everything happens. But in the fourth quarter, it comes alive. And Mississippi State needs to find out why that's the case.
Exactly. They need to do some soul searching, Jed.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot I can add to the underachieving bowl of the week. I don't know these teams. Just Mike Leach's system doesn't seem to be working real well in the SEC yet, but it hasn't been operating long. I understand you've got to get certain types of players to come in and make that really work. So I can see why State will give them more time, but you just never know what State's going to end up doing. LSU, man, this is the second year in a row that there's no way to know if they're going to come out and play well or not. And even when they're playing well right now, it's not really that good. So now I think this is a week that Mississippi State can just make it a back-to-back, wins against LSU, which would actually be pretty hilarious. So.
Would cause the SEC West to implode. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a world where LSU finishes DFL in the SEC West? That would be awesome. All right,
that would be hilarious.
Shall we, gentlemen?
Picks? Is it time for picks?
It's time for picks. Christmas comes early. It's time for picks. We come into this season. It's been it's a tight race here when you look at the overall records. Steve, you had a rough go last week, 3-8. You fall one game under 500 at 18-19 overall. I had a 5-6 week where brings my record to 22-15. Jeb, you had a rough week, 3-8, brings your overall record to 17-20. Jake had a 5-6 week. He is now 19-18. Craig had the best week of us all. He went 8-3. He now has a 21-16 record,
Wizard.
just one shy of me. Kevin 4-7. He's 19-18. Alex, he's nothing, and Hank 4-7 with a 20-17 overall record. That's all of our shows in the pick'em. But for just us three right now, I'll go ahead and give Jake's picks out too. Let's look at the first game. I'll go first this week. Missouri. It is now 1.5 points, so it is truly a pick'em at BC. I like Mizzou in this one. When it's a pick'em, it's essentially who you think is going to win the game. Points don't matter, but I do think Mizzou runs up to a 2-touchdown victory. Steve.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be a 2-touchdown victory as well. I'm taking Mizzou for this game. They could potentially look very good, but do not fall into that Chestnut Hill trap. Go up there and win the game because it's not going to feel like an SEC game up there. So take care of business, 11 o'clock in the morning, get out of there, win by at least 2 points, and go.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think Missouri's going to win this game. I don't think it'll be a dominant game or anything. Don't get me wrong, but I think Boston College, it's not they're overrated. They've won all three of their games up to this point, but they haven't really faced a competition like Missouri, who's not the top tier SEC, but still a decent team. So I'm picking Missouri.
All righty. Moving on, the battle for the Music City. Georgia taking on Vandy, 35.5-point favorite. So that line has actually gone up now. I still think Georgia's going to cover this spread. I think a 45-3 type game is in store for this matchup. I think JT's going to have another sharp game. I think James Cook and Zamir White are going to continue doing what they do, and I think you're going to see this offense surge ahead in preparation for Arkansas. Steve, do you agree?
Yeah, I actually totally agree. I was thinking 45-7, but 45-3 would work just the same. I expect Georgia to handle business. Like I said, right now they're the best team in the country, and they haven't given me reason to think otherwise. And our playoff rankings that we have on our review show, they've been at number 1 for the last 3 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see, and it's kind of interesting keeping up with that. But yeah, I'll take the Georgia Bulldogs in this game.
All right.
And I'm generally wrong when I pick based off how I feel like a game's going to go. Is Georgia 35.5 points better than Vandy? Yes, they definitely are. But I don't know that they're going to cover this spread only because I think Vanderbilt will be up for the game, will play as hard as they can, and Georgia will just end up running, I think, a lot of the clock out, maybe try a few things to kind of use the game to get some things set straight, and maybe don't beat them as bad as they could if they were really putting everything into it. So my prediction is more like 38-10, where they just barely don't cover the spread, but still win handily.
All right. And I think South Carolina is light years ahead of Vandy, so I think the idea of the backdoor cover is not going to get us this week. It looks like Jake had UGA as well. In the battle for Stark Vegas, the Cowbell Bowl, I should say, Mississippi State host LSU. LSU 2.5-point favorites on the road. Essentially a pick 'em. So it's going to come down to who do you think is going to win the game. I like Mississippi State here. I think they have a lot more upside right now than LSU. I think a lot of the off-the-field issues are plaguing LSU, and it's only going to get worse for them. So give me the Bulldogs. And, Steve, how do you feel?
I agree with that as well. UCLA beat LSU basically running shallow crossing routes. Mike Leach runs that every play. Every single play he calls has a shallow crosser. If you watch the game and see what happens. If LSU plays man coverage, they'll throw for 650 yards again. Just absolutely, period. So I think LSU will end up losing the game. Mississippi State will cover, maybe even win the game outright by 2 touchdowns.
If Mississippi State is covering, they're winning. So, Jeb?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Mississippi State will win, or I'm picking them to win that game. Not by a lot, but just because I don't think LSU is – I just don't think they're that good this year at all.
Jake, give me a paragraph on why you say LSU. Go. And our next game of the week, Texas A&M versus Arkansas. A&M comes in as 5-point favorites. Kind of a low spread for that, for what Arkansas was coming into the season. I'm going to take the Hogs in this one. They're more physical. They're more dominant. They have a better run game. KJ, they're better at the quarterback position right now. They have a lot of good things in their favor, except for the home environment. The fact that it's at Jerry World makes A&M the favorite here. I think if it was in Fayetteville, Arkansas would be the favorite, and this would be an even easier selection. But give me the Hogs here, +5. They're either going to cover, but I think they're going to outright win, so it doesn't matter. Steve.
Yeah, I'm going with Arkansas in this game. I think so much emotion. You take away the run game with the Haynes King, and this defense is just going to eat up the Texas A&M offense. Whenever you deal with the game manager, I don't know if Isaiah Spiller and those guys are going to have enough of the juice, and the drop 8 is going to give Calzada trouble. Each quarterback that sees the drop 8 has trouble the first time they do it. So Arkansas is going to win this game.
Jeb.
And I have written down that I'm picking A&M in this one, and I cannot at the moment honestly tell you why I was thinking that, other than Arkansas has been playing way above where I thought they would be this season. I could see this easily being one of those games that they don't live up to the expectations. Arkansas A&M has had a little more trouble getting going, but they do have an elite defense. If they could just get that offense kicking on all cylinders, I think they can beat Arkansas this week. I think they're a better team than Texas.
And it looks like Jake is going Arkansas as well. Moving on, Auburn 27.5-point favorites, a big spread, but Auburn, outside of the Penn State game, has not had trouble covering the spread, especially as a favorite against G5 teams or even FCS teams. I'm taking Auburn in hopes that they cover. Well, not in hopes, but if I'm an Auburn fan, I hope that they cover through the air. But they're going to cover nonetheless, no matter what they do. They have a great running game, so they're going to at least cover in that regard. But they should try to cover through Bo Nix. But I'm taking the War Eagle.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. They should try and throw the ball. They're going to end up running the ball, and they're going to beat Georgia State by 40 points.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Auburn fan, but I think they'll come out of that loss and actually play pretty well this week. Just trying to get everything back together and get more confidence in their team and with their fans. So I think they'll cover that spread.
And Jake, don't worry, you're not going to lose your Bama card by picking the barn. So there you go. All right, our next matchup, Kentucky at South Carolina. I think it's going to be an interesting contest. I think ultimately Kentucky does get the win and get the cover. It's going to be a little clunky early, but I think Kentucky finds a way to get that touchdown advantage over South Carolina. So I'm going to take Kentucky in this one, but they've got some things to figure out. But I think ultimately Chris Rodriguez is going to get things going in the running game, and I think Wandell Robinson is going to have a big one for the Wildcats as they get back on track. Steve,
yeah, you probably shouldn't be too thrilled that you're only a 5-point favorite over South Carolina, no matter where the game is played. That shows you how bad they played last week. Now, South Carolina's best chance is to make this game ugly, very clunky, like you put it, Corey, and try and creak out a win, a low-scoring game, because the defense for South Carolina is going to be pretty good. But I just don't see it happen. I think Wandell Robinson, I think Josh Ali, and those guys are going to have a big day, and Kentucky's going to win by a touchdown or two, by a 10-point game. Kentucky.
Yeah, I agree. Kentucky looked really good against Missouri, and that was a lot of fun. Their first game was a lot of fun to watch. I think the hope, if you're a Kentucky fan, is last week was just a bump in the road. It happens. Sometimes you come in, you don't play as well as you expect to. And I think they get back to their winning ways this week against – well, I mean, they've won this last game too, so it's not getting back to winning ways, but I think they get back to playing a lot better against South Carolina and end up winning that game pretty handily.
All right, so a full sweep for Kentucky. All right, Tennessee rolls into the swamp 20-point favorites. Or Tennessee rolls into the swamp 20-point underdog, I should say, favorites. Tennessee wishes they were 20-point favorites rolling into the swamp. I wish Tennessee was 20-point favorites rolling into the swamp, but they're not. And I'm taking Tennessee in the game because I think 20 points is a big spread cover with Alabama. I think they're not really a team that's going to play well against the spread because they run the ball, they short the game, they force turnovers, things like that. I think that they just will simply not have time to get a 20-point lead over somebody, even a team like Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to score with them a little bit. I think Tennessee's going to put up more points than people are thinking. I would say if Tennessee stays in single digits, Florida will cover, but I think Tennessee's going to be up near that 20-point mark, which means Florida's going to have to score 40, which I just don't think that they're going to. So I'm going to take Tennessee. I think this is a 17-point win for Florida, which would be not a cover for the Gators. So I'm taking the Vols. Steve.
Yeah, if Joe Milton takes the field, I take this back. But if Hendon Hooker's the guy, he can complete some deep balls. There's probably going to be a play or two that comes through that they're able to hit against Florida because that's the type defense they run. As Corey said, if you hit 20 points, then Florida has to score 40. I don't think they can do that. Just the style of offense that they want to run is not conducive to scoring a ton of points. Now, Tennessee should get tired at the end. They don't have the athletes to do this. So maybe in the second half of the fourth quarter, there's a little bit of a problem. It turns into a 28-20 game to the point where you're sweating whether or not they cover or not. So something like that. But I think Tennessee is going to hold their own. I think their offense is going to do enough to where Florida can't score that much. And I do think Richardson will play this week. And this will be the week that next week there's actually a conversation about maybe this kid should start.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeb?
Yeah, and I have to agree with everything you pretty much said. I think Tennessee loves to, at least right now under Coach Oppo, loves to try and hit those big plays. They do it over and over and over. They miss most of them. But occasionally they hit one or two, and I think they'll hit enough to at least score some points. It's not going to be enough to stop Florida, and oddly enough, it'll be Tennessee that prevents this game from slowing down enough for them to really keep it close at all. So I think Florida will win pretty easily, but still at the same time, I think Tennessee scores enough to cover that spread.
And it looks like Jake is picking Flo right. I think AR-15 gives them the better chance of covering, and I think if Joe Milton starts, this would be easily. This is assuming Hendon Hooker is the guy for Tennessee. All right. Southern Miss travels to Alabama. The Mustard Buzzards are now 45.5-point favorites, so that line's gone up a little bit. But I still like them. because I just think that's a huge spread. And Alabama, if they don't win 62-7, they're not going to cover. And they're struggling a little bit offensively. They're just not quite in sync. They're very streaky. They're hot for a short amount of time, and then they go on a cold streak. And you can't do that if you're playing against a 45.5-point spread. So I think the Monster Buzzards are just going to cover just because simply Alabama is not last year's Alabama.
Yeah, and the
Steve.
100 yards rushing against Florida Alabama had, they're probably going to try to establish the run this time. They heard all week that they had to do it, and that's something that a Nick Saban team is going to do. So I expect them to really try to establish that run. In the meantime, they're probably going to slow the game down. It's going to be an unintended consequence. And it could be a 42-3 type game, but that's not good enough to cover. So I'm going to take the Mustard Buzzards in this game.
Yeah, and I don't think we're really sleeping on Alabama. Everybody expects Alabama to win very big in this game. But I agree. I don't think their offense has just been dominant this year like it has been in the past. It's not hugely explosive. It's still very, very good. But I agree too that I think Nick Saban will take a little time and maybe work on the run game and a few other little things that just prevents them from completely destroying Southern Miss to the point of covering that spread. But either way, I mean, it's not like it's going to be a rough week for Alabama or anything.
52-7 does not cover.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's the problem. It's just the size of the spread.
Yeah.
It's a lot of points. I think there'll be some Z's being cut on that sideline before they cover. I think they have a better chance of falling asleep on the sideline than they do of covering the spread. They're going to have to score into the 70s possibly to cover this thing. So they're not a. I don't think they get to 60 in practice. To be honest with you, Jake, not yet at least. Maybe this game we're playing. Maybe when they play Southwest Missouri State in November. And on that magical weekend in November where all the SEC team plays FCS squads, maybe they'll score 60 then, but not this week.
He might be able to get it against LSU too. Bill O'Brien might pick Ed Orgeron in that defense apart.
Yeah, probably. And Jake, probably won't watch this game. Just being honest. All right, OU, they're hosting the Mountaineers of West Virginia, the Couch Burners. They are 17-point favorites. Oklahoma is. I hate this spread because Oklahoma. Let's just say that they had a team that West Virginia would probably wipe off the face of the earth in Nebraska, and they made it a tight game. I think Oklahoma is just – they're not a very good team right now. They have Spencer Rattler, yes. They have some explosive pieces, yes. But for some reason, they're just they struggle. They struggle to score. They give up big plays. They give up stupid plays in special teams. They're just not. They're not a playoff team. They are a solid to good Big 12 team, which if they play like that against Iowa State, they're going to get their ass handed to them. If they play that way against Kansas State, they're going to get their ass handed to them. Right? If they play that way against Texas, they'll get their ass handed to them. Like this is not a game where you want to come in all sloppy and all out of sync. A 17-point spread can do that to a team. They can inflate their ego a little bit, and I think it does. And I think West Virginia. I'm going to take the points here. I'm not saying West Virginia is going to outright win, but they have a really good chance of doing so. But I do think they're going to at least cover. Steve, what do you think?
I think Oklahoma this is going to be the wake-up game, and not necessarily think they're going to be totally good. I think they're a 5 to 8 level team. They're probably overrated at the moment. I think they're going to get it together this week, and this could be a 3-touchdown win, a 42-21, where Oklahoma kind of feels good about themselves for the first time.
Okay.
And it's possible, but Oklahoma would have to pull a lot of things together that they haven't pulled together yet. They struggled against Tulane. They struggled against Nebraska. And West Virginia is a pretty good team. I don't think good enough to beat Oklahoma, but good enough to give them all they can handle for 4 quarters. So I think West Virginia covers.
Good enough to cover. Yeah, I think. Yeah. They're not going to burn couches after this one, but they're going to cover. And looks like Jake agrees with us as well. So the next game, Cliff Kings. No, just kidding. Texas Tech comes into Austin. They are 7.5-point underdogs, which that should tell you a lot because Texas Tech is a program that is struggling under Matt Wells. They're playing a little bit better right now, but overall, I think that it's just a overall struggle to do anything well for the Red Raiders. But I think Texas, they're a team that really came crashing back down to earth after the Arkansas game. They're 7.5-point favorites here. I think with this small of a spread, I do think Texas, it's just going to out-talent Texas Tech, and I do think that's going to be enough to cover the spread. I think they win by 2 touchdowns in this one, just because I think the talent discrepancy in this matchup is going to be the thing that gets them through.
Yeah, Texas Tech this year is really running the football pretty well. It's kind of a surprise. You got Baylor and Texas Tech trying to do things on the ground, and that's just weird to see. So they're kind of in the Kentucky, drop down to the running game, going from the air raid, and finally getting the personnel to do that. And Texas's defense is a little bit iffy, but you have Sark and you have Bijan Robinson, and those guys. I don't understand what he's doing with the quarterback position, but I'm expecting Texas to win this fairly comfortably.
Jeb?
Yeah, I agree. Still think Texas is a good team. I know they ran into Arkansas, who's just playing heads and tails better than anybody expected, and that was definitely not a good game for them. But other than that, and I agree with Steve, the quarterback position has been kind of odd. I'm not sure what exactly is going to happen there, but their running game has been strong. Their defense is pretty good outside of that Arkansas game. I think they cover against Texas Tech.
All right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for our show. This has been a very, very fun episode of STC After Dark. I think my internet decided to come to play here in this last segment. Maybe I'll give it a pep talk next week, and maybe we can get a full game out of it. My internet is like Tennessee. It's just good in spurts, but overall just craps out occasionally. It's tired. I gotta get my internet in. I gotta get it into the weight room.
We need to get you some AOL discs.
we need to get some strength conditioning over here on my internet modem. And I gotta have people quit picking up the phone line too. That sucks. But in all seriousness, this has been another episode of SEC After Dark. This has been a lot of fun. If you want to follow us on social media, check us out right down there below. I'm not going to read out every little social media outlet. If you want to check out a La Terrain watch, check out that promo code POMCAST right there. If you want to see us on YouTube, hit that bell, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We'll let you know when we're live. You can join in on the chat like our people, Jake and Guy and the other ones that have been in on the chat as well. So it's been another fun edition here. We're going to come at you each and every week. I'm going to have I'm going to make sure I don't finish my cocktail before I get on the air. I'm going to make sure I have some left in the tank for when we're talking. Steve, you killed your land shark right there, man. That was beautiful. So, but I just want to remind you guys where we can find you. You can find me on Believe in Dogs, the Believe in Georgia Dogs podcast. You can find me on Illegal Motion. And you can find me right here on Beast of the East, all on the Believe Podcast Network as well, audio version-wise. Of course, you can find my man Steve, home of the Palmcast. You can find Steve making pinch hit appearances on all the shows on the Palmcast and Willis Digital Media Network. And, of course, you can find the three of us right here each and every week on SEC After Dark. So for Steve and for Jeb, I am Corey Burton. This is SEC After Dark. We thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your week and have an even better weekend. We'll see you back here next week to break down all the Week 4 action and preview Week 5. Good night and see you later.